your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
Hey there, horror fans. Welcome to another edition of the Weekly Horoscope. I'm your host, Jerry, here with my partner, Matt, and welcome to episode 76. And our topic this week, Matt, is the film Within. And Hollywood has long kind of tried to let you behind the curtain and kind of show you. They make movies about the process of making movies. And we thought that'd be an interesting topic to approach from a horror perspective. But you and I selected films from a completely different point of view that I think is going to make for a nice combination tonight. What do you think of this subject?
Yeah, I think the movie selection was well rounded. One of the movies we picked was Sinister. I was going to pick The Ring, but I thought they were just too similar. And in fact, Sinister was inspired by The Ring. So I thought having those two movies juxtaposed would have just been way too similar. I thought there were some other options out there. I really like the movie within a movie, the genre, because it can kind of demonstrate how the horror of technology within society, like how like a viral video can lead to bullying, or news can create these false narratives, or the movie within the movie can showcase like the level of decay that technology can have on people themselves, like staring at your phone too much or something. So I just think it's an interesting way to tell stories and break the fourth wall.
Yeah, I think in the last 10 or 15 years, there's with social media and with technology growing in different avenues. There's been a lot of movies, The Host and Unfriended, and certain things that take that video aspect of life and throw horror at it. The first movie I think of in this category is The Ring, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I steered away from it thinking it was maybe too right on the nose.
Two on the nose, yeah.
And I really like what we came up with here. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Our first film for the movie Within is Wes Craven's New Nightmare from 1994, directed by Wes Craven, who last episode we named our number one horror director of all time. And it's funny that this tied in directly. We didn't plan this, but a movie like this is really kind of a microcosm of why he achieved that spot, because he's so willing to change and be different with the decades that he's working in, and he's trying to reinvent himself and try new things. And this is a perfect example of that.
100%. And he's in the movie playing himself, and even kind of talks about how like once a story dies, the evil like leaves the story, right? And he's actually talking about his own Nightmare on Elm Street series. He's like, the series just kind of died. Like, where do we go from there? Where do we go after that? And so the whole movie just breaks the fourth wall. And what's interesting is that him breaking the fourth wall with his entire franchise leads him 2 years later into creating his next great franchise, Scream, which kind of brought back Slash himself. So it's not only that it's the genius in the movie itself, but it leads into his next genius like level series that everyone comes to love.
Yeah, that was in my notes as well. As this is kind of his first dip into the meta.
Yeah,
it becomes the basis for the next slasher that he puts out.
And it works so well with the Nightmare series, because the Nightmare series was meta within the dream world and reality, and how those coexist. And now he's taking a third element of the film. So you've got the reality, how film affects people, and then dream world, and he plays with all of those layers in a brilliant way.
Yeah, our movie starts with Heather Langenkamp, who, of course, played Nancy in the original and in number 3. But it's not Nancy. It's the actress, Heather Langenkamp. And we are in a world that knows that she's an actress and knows that she makes movies and knows that she made those movies.
Right.
And, we're in a world where she is friends with Robert Englund from working together on the set.
And he's artsy and drinks tea and yeah.
And she talks to Wes Craven about new ideas he has cooking. So we're in what is supposed to be the real world, right? We're not in a movie anymore.
Everyone's aware of the Freddy character. It's like Santa Claus. They say that later on in the movie.
Yeah. Heather has a nightmare about filming a new Elm Street movie and her husband is on the special effects crew. They're creating a new Freddy's glove, and the glove comes to life, possessed by evil spirits, and it kills the crew, including her husband. And she wakes up from that nightmare in the middle of an earthquake. She's been apparently there's been a lot of earthquakes lately. She's been getting prank calls, and she very quickly has painted the picture that she's on edge.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's also meta because in the early '90s there were lots of earthquakes going on in LA, right? So they kind of like threw that in there that was kind of an issue for a while.
She goes to a TV interview with Robert Englund, and who of course was Freddie, and they're discussing the 10-year anniversary of the original. The audience is filled with people in Freddy costumes.
Yeah.
It's like you can't escape it at this point. It's a dominant part of your life. Um, and it's funny when we covered Nightmare on Elm Street 3, I actually commented that I thought her acting was very poor. I actually think she's better in this. Like
I
playing
think she's the best
herself.
in this. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
And not only that, but becoming the Nancy character, as we see later on, she starts
Yeah.
off as just the actress, like I'm just the actress, but then throughout the movie becomes Nancy. Like I thought that was just it's top tier.
And I can't imagine it's easy to play yourself and like, okay, just be yourself and be natural. Well, that
And
is
then
the essence of acting. So, it's
right.
no easier to play yourself. But I was critical of her. I know she's an iconic character, and but I was critical of her acting. I thought she was better in this.
I agree.
So she gets a call as she's leaving the interview from New Line, and they tell her that Wes is working on a new script, and she is the star. And she goes for a meeting and she discusses it. And they say, well, where is Wes in the script? Well, I'm not sure. It's a work in progress, which becomes kind of an ongoing, running thread through
It's
the
a
film.
theme, right?
Yeah. Her husband, Chase, who is a special effects worker, is designing the new glove, which is a reference back to the nightmare she had. And he was keeping it a secret from her because she didn't even know that they were making, they were working on a new script.
And it's also a meta reference to them wanting to redesign the Freddy character in itself for a new movie, which was also part of the movie.
Yeah. Her son Dylan is having nightmares, and he wakes up with his pet stuffed T-Rex is sliced open. And we of course know what the slices look like, and we know exactly what it means. She calls her husband back from a job he's working on. He's driving home, falling asleep, and we see Freddy's glove come up through the seat where he's driving on and come towards him and stab him.
Yeah, it's actually one part of the movie I thought was cool I mean, this movie is ahead of its time in a lot of ways, but it's 1994 and there's like several cell phone calls that are made. Right. So I mean, it's LA, so they all have their executives have
Right.
money, but I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's ahead of its time in so many ways. Like, you don't see a lot of 94 movies with people with cell phones.
Yeah. Now, if you write a movie today, you have to, if somebody's trapped and isolated, you have to figure out a way to write the cell phone out of it because it's so prevalent.
Right, right.
Where at that point it was more of a novelty a
Right.
little bit.
Right. Now it's an easy, like, well, they couldn't just text. It's like, well, there was no service, right? You have to write that out, like you
Yeah.
said. Yeah.
You dropped it and broke it, or your battery, something, right? You got to
Yeah.
figure out a way to
You have
address
to
that.
say that because people will bring it up immediately.
Well, why
right?
didn't you just use your cell phone? Right.
Right.
Exactly. So Chase crashes and dies, and she has a nightmare about this, but is woke by the police at the door saying they have bad news, and Chase is dead. So she goes to the morgue to view the body, and they pull down the face, and she makes them pull it down more. And she notes the slice marks in the chest, which are not in any way indicative of a car accident.
I thought this scene was probably one of the campier scenes. I've never had to identify a body. But don't you have to be like escorted by police and there's paperwork? Like she just kind of waltzes back there.
Yeah,
And
she
they're
goes
working
there on her own. Yeah,
they're working on dead bodies like mechanics, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Hey, what's up, lady?" Like, and they're just like, "Yeah, go back there and go talk to Fred," or Tom, what you know what I mean? Like, and it's just so casual. Like, I was just
the other thing
excuse
is
to
they
show
have
dead
so
bodies.
many,
Yeah.
right? A lot of morgue scenes. There's a couple bodies, maybe Reanimator being the exception, with a room full of bodies. But where do you live there's so many people that were killed in the last half hour or whatever?
She lives in LA.
Yeah, it's just littered with bodies, which I thought was a little funny.
Yeah.
So she knows what the slice marks mean. She knows what it looks like. She goes to Chase's funeral, and I found this is one thing I thought. Well, she doesn't seem very upset about losing her husband,
Right. She still seems freaked out about everything that's happening, right? She's completely spooked.
but she's no more freaked out about her husband being dead than she is
Right.
about earthquakes and nightmares.
Right. It's almost like yeah, it's not even bothering her.
It's like what a mild inconvenience this is. Um, at the funeral, she has a hallucination, and she sees Freddie in the ground, uh, below the casket, leading Dylan in and then pulling him down underground. And she jumps in the hole to pull Dylan out, and the whole thing was a hallucination. But that really messes her up.
Yeah,
Her
and
mind
that
is
scene,
not her own.
yeah, that scene had a very classic Nightmare on Elm Street feel to it too. I liked it.
Dylan is now acting very odd since he's been having these nightmares. He's been acting stranger and stranger.
And by the way, the kid that plays him, he was also Gage in Pet Cemetery. He's a great child actor.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he does a very good job in this movie.
He's acting odd. She finds him in the middle of the night, uh, watching the original Nightmare on Elm Street on TV. He's just standing there staring at it, and he starts singing Freddy's song, and she's freaked out. She meets with John Saxon, who played her dad in the films, at a playground, and you're thinking, wow, this is really nice that all these people were in this movie together and remain such close friends.
Yeah.
And while they're having this discussion at the playground, Dylan climbs to the very top of a tall playground structure, and it's like he's reaching to the sky. He just lost his dad. The kid's all messed up, and he falls, and he's caught by Heather. She calls Robert and asks if she knows what's going on, if he knows what's going on with the story, where they are in the script. She wants to talk to somebody that's kind of in the know because of everything that's happening in her life. And she tells him, and he tells her that all I know is that Wes has gotten as far as the part where Dylan is reaching for God. That's as far as he's gotten the script.
And I thought that was, and that's very cool the way they wrote that in. And I'll say one thing this movie didn't age well as far as special effects. As much as I love the movie, there's just certain special effects that just outdated. And as horrifying as, especially as a parent, as horrifying as that scene is when Dylan jumps off the playground at the rocket ship, I couldn't help but laugh because I had to watch the scene 3 times because when he's caught by when Heather catches him and does a tumble and roll, you can clearly see the stunt man is like 3 times her size, but in her clothes. And I had to rewind it and watch it again. I was like, really? And like, it's just someone like 3 times her size in her clothes. And it kind of ruined, it kind of took you out of the moment for a second. It's just part of some of the scenes in this movie are like that.
Yeah.
The special effects are a little bad.
Well, when a mother gets incredible strength from adrenaline to tip over a car, if your child is falling, they become incredibly puffy.
Like the Hulk.
Yeah, you puff out so that you can absorb the blow of the child. It's only natural.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that.
It's actually very realistic. So,
Yeah. Dylan attacks Heather with knives on his fingers that he's taped, and then he starts convulsing and foaming at the mouth. She takes him to the hospital, and she goes to Wes to see what's going on. And he tells her that Freddy is trying to break into the real world. And you talked about how the evil's supposed to die when the story dies, but Freddy's so strong, he was trying to break into the real world. And since she played Nancy, who stopped him in the movie, she's the focal point of keeping him away. And it's up to her to stop him again.
Yeah, he says that the script is a nightmare in progress, right?
And again, we go back to as they're talking, we see in the other room his word processor, and everything they say in conversation is added to the script.
Yeah.
So it goes back to this is being written as we experience it kind of.
Which is another kind of meta. Yeah.
Yeah. The two FX guys are dead, and Heather's sheets are shredded after she has a Freddy dream. So the hospital doesn't want Heather anywhere near Dylan. They think she's going mad and she's a danger to the child. And they inject Dylan with something to make him sleep. Julie, the babysitter who helps Heather and helps take care of Dylan, is in trying to keep him awake. But Freddie enters the room and kills Julie. And this was, I thought, was a really good scene because we get a glimpse of Freddie in the room and he sticks his blades through Julie and lifts her up in the air. And then we also get the perspective from the nurses outside who can't see Freddie, but see the body up in the air with nothing supporting it, flying around. Then they see it slammed to the wall and then dragged up the wall and across the ceiling.
Which is homage to the original, which I really like the scene. It's one of my favorite.
I thought it was probably the best scene in the movie for
Probably,
my opinion. But so that was a really cool scene. But Dylan manages to escape and he runs away. Heather follows him across the highway, and we are immediately met with the worst scene in the entire movie, with terrible CGI and a giant Freddy face,
formed out of
stalking.
the clouds like Simba's father, right?
He's like the man in the moon come down. It was bad. I did not like that part at all.
Yeah.
I thought conceptually you could have done something way different than that.
Like I said, the special effects were a little outdated in this movie in several scenes.
Dylan makes it home, and John Saxon is there. But when Heather arrives, he's referring to her as Nancy, like he has been pulled back into his movie role.
Right, and they have a little comedic scene, like it's just a couple lines. Why are you calling me Nancy? And he goes, "Why are you calling me John?" And like then they continue to go into character.
Yeah,
like they're at least making fun of what they're doing.
Yeah. So at this point, Freddie has Dylan, and Nancy takes sleeping pills to go find him. And she slides into an underground lair where she sees a copy of the script that's being written as she lives it. As her and Dylan experience it, she's just seeing it on the pages. Freddie attacks her and throws her into a pit of snakes and is holding her down. She picks one up and sticks it in his eye where it bites his eyeball and it latches itself there.
Because we can't have a movie without an eyeball scene.
Yeah, somebody's got to get it in the eye. That's the way it is. And it's funny, we've never done the category like poked in the eye. And,
It's coming. Now that you say it, it's coming.
They fight. Freddie gets control. He has her by the neck. Dylan comes out of nowhere and stabs Freddie from behind. So he turns, he lets go of Heather, and he chases Dylan, who hides in a small opening in a furnace that Freddie can't get into.
This whole scene is just a Tom and Jerry episode.
You're right. Yeah, very true. He can't reach, he can't get in, he's too big. He stretches out his arm like we've seen him do in past movies. His body is completely morphable. He reaches all the way in and he grabs Dylan. Heather's trying to get to him to save her son, and she's fighting through quicksand and stairs that are falling away.
Muck.
But she fights through it, and she stabs Freddie and pushes him into the furnace opening and shuts the door. And my first question was, if she could push him into the furnace opening, how come he couldn't fit in when he was trying to get in? Right? I thought you didn't fit, but she just pushed you in and you fit. So
yeah, he needed a little kick in the butt. Yeah.
So she pushes him in, pulls Dylan out, and they lock it up. And there's a tangle where he comes to the bars. He's attacking her with his tongue wraps around her neck. But they fire it up and they eventually burn Freddie. And back at home, everything's okay. Everything's calm. Everything's back to normal. She gets the completed script from Wes, and it ends, with everything they went through, and she's home. So it's very.
It says thank for playing Nancy one more time.
Yeah, exactly. Playing Nancy one more time. So it is.
And I have a feeling that was a real conversation too, right? Like, and that was added to the movie. Like maybe she was like, "Really, we're going to do this movie again?" And he probably really did. Hey, thank you for playing this character one more time. And then they put that in the movie. I thought that was cool.
Well, there's also like the idea of I don't know what else she's been doing. Like, I haven't seen her in a lot of other stuff.
Right.
So she might have been available.
Yeah. I heard I was when I was doing research on the movie, apparently Wes Craven wanted to ask Johnny Depp, but he was afraid he'd say no because he was kind of a big deal back then.
Yeah.
He was kind of on up and coming, and later they asked Johnny Depp about it. He was like, if he had asked me, I would have loved to have been in that movie. So it was kind of a missed opportunity. Yeah, he
Yeah.
just
Right.
never asked. But like Johnny Depp later on in his career was like, of course I would have done that. Yeah, but he never asked him.
This was an attempt to reignite the Nightmare series. This is 10 years after the original. Um, five sequels already in the books at that point. Declining ticket sales. And this actually was the least profitable of all the movies in the series up to this point. There's some things about it I like. I like the idea that he's like took the story world and turned it on its head. Um,
Yes.
they did new Freddy makeup that
The
I
whole character's
hated.
different. Yeah, yeah. He's got like black leather pants and a trench coat, and it's just I don't know.
I didn't, and just the face makeup, the the burnt string cheese melted face of Freddy Krueger was so iconic. The
Yeah.
new makeup was, I didn't like it.
It was bulky, like a bulky looking mask that made it look like he was on steroids or something. Like, yeah, I didn't like it. I wasn't a fan of it. It looked like a motorcycle helmet type style. Like it
Yeah,
wasn't.
it was
Yeah,
like a guy with a big head with a nylon mask pulled tight over it.
yeah,
It
yeah.
didn't
The
have any
leather.
of that fleshy realism that the original one had, and I didn't like it.
When he
The
first
change.
comes out and attacks Heather or Nancy, and he's like swinging at her, but he's wearing black leather pants. I kind of laughed. I was like, no, can't
Yeah,
can't
and
do
we
that.
touched on some of the CGI was and some of the effects were a little weak. Um, but as you said, the idea of a meta self-aware movie is
Yes,
what led Wes Craven 2 years later to create Scream, a very self-aware
right.
slasher that hit it out of the park. So
And I mean, and it's also a tough movie. 1994 was a tough year. If you go back and look at the Wikipedia page for movies that came out in 1994, it's astonishing how
yeah,
many
it's
good
one of the
movies
best
came out that
years
year.
ever for
It's
movies.
one of the best years ever. So, and this is in there, and it did poorly in the box office, but it's still a good movie, and that goes to show how many good movies came out that year. So, I don't think it did bad for. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it wasn't received well right away, but I think looking back. I think it's just the genius of Wes Craven to kind of create something new, in which I think he did well. For all its flaws, not my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie at all. The first and third one, before I like those before this. But I like that it did something, ahead of its time.
Yeah, agree. And willing to be different. That is
Yeah, and poke
a
fun at
Wes Craven
itself and be
hallmark.
meta. Yeah, right, right.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Our second film in this category, the film Within, is Sinister from 2012, directed by Scott Derrickson, who last year reunited with the star Ethan Hawke to give us the excellent Black Phone.
Yeah,
So Scott Derrickson is a director to certainly pay attention to. Um, this movie is actually my daughter's favorite horror movie, and in 2020, a study by Broadband Choices named it the scariest movie ever, based on heart rates of sample viewers. They took 20
interesting.
of what were deemed the scariest movies, and they hooked up heart monitors to sample audiences, and the greatest increase in heart rate from any film was Sinister.
Wow, that's
Now,
impressive.
I won't go as far to say I think it's the scariest movie ever. Uh, I still think that's The Exorcist, but this
We all
movie is very, very creepy and very well done.
from a study standpoint, we also have to understand why the heart is racing in the first place, and we can't attribute that to just being scared. Right.
Right.
So that's a completely different. We can't associate those emotions directly, but we can say it's the movie with the highest heart rate for
Yeah.
whatever that means. But I wouldn't say that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the scariest, right?
Right. That was
I
their interpretation, not mine. And I would counter that argument with saying there's a good deal of jump scares in this movie,
Yeah,
which automatically elevates your heart rate. So,
right.
but not to criticize the movie. I think this is a fantastic movie, and I really
I'm just
enjoyed
criticizing the
rewatching it.
study.
Yeah, right.
Right, right.
Well, I've never heard of that study group before. There wasn't Harvard. It was
Right. Well, it's not. You're not going to find it in a journal, probably, right? Yeah,
it was
it was BuzzFeed.
Broadband Choices was the
Rob, yeah,
I never heard of them, but
yeah.
uh,
But still, interesting. It's an interesting thing that they measured. I would say this about this movie: it has some of the best sound design I've ever heard in a horror movie. I love the sound in this. I love the sound score that they have.
that's
Like for
funny.
all of,
Yeah,
uh,
no, it's funny you would say that because my notes actually said it has some of the most creepy
eerie,
visuals.
yeah. Well,
So I guess all
those
that,
Super 8 films, yeah, those Super 8 films with that gritty 70s style.
yeah,
The way this movie is put together, I thought was just really brilliant. I love this movie. It's not, I mean, it's not one of my favorite movies of all time, but I love this movie. In the 2010s, it's one of the best horror movies for sure.
yeah, totally agree. Our movie starts with true crime writer Elliot Oswalt moving his family into a new house to work on a book. He had some early career success and then some failures, and he's desperate for a hit. He doesn't tell them that the house they moved into is the house the very murder took place in,
Yeah,
or in
and
the backyard.
one thing I like about the movie is they give it enough backstory to make the characters seem real. Like the family has real strife and there's real issues. Like they name some of his books, Kentucky Blood and the Boulder, Colorado thing, or they name a bunch of his books and then talk about him for a little bit, so it kind of makes the character feel more real, which I thought was some good detail, and it doesn't take up too much time.
Yeah, he had a brief interlude with the sheriff of the new town, and
Yeah,
he tells him, we don't like people poking around saying we did a bad job, and he's like, well, sometimes cops get it wrong, and he said, well, sometimes writers get it wrong. He's like, I thought you did pretty good with Kentucky Blood, but
yeah, and
the last two
He's
were
got opinions
garbage.
about each book, which I like that bit of writing right there. I thought it was really good writing.
Yeah. He goes up into the attic to put something away, and he finds a box of home movies that happens to have a scorpion underneath it, and he kind of slams the box down and crushes the scorpion. The scorpion.
That's when I would have moved. I would be like, all right, we got to go.
Yeah. And he starts watching the videos. And they're all, they're the reels, the metal cases. Like you said, there's very
Super 8s.
distinct,
Yeah,
yeah, very distinct sound to just even unpacking them sounds a certain way and
yeah.
feeding
Tin
them through and
cans.
lining
Yeah,
them up. Yeah, yeah, it's
yeah.
it's classic and it gives you that nostalgic feeling just from hearing it.
Hmm.
Um, he starts watching the videos and they show the murder that takes place right there in the backyard of that house. And it starts by showing like family movies and they're all happy and they're all just interacting until they're swinging from a tree. They're all hanged in the backyard. Uh,
And that scene, that hanging scene, is actually the opening scene of the movie that happens in slow motion. You have no idea what you're watching, and I will say, for horror movies, or maybe any movie, it's one of the coolest openings I've ever seen, because it was the first time I watched a movie that made me go like an opening of a movie, and I just sat back like, what am I about
okay,
to get
yeah.
into?
What is this? What's
Yeah,
going
it
on
gets
here?
your attention immediately, and most movies don't do that.
He watches the next video, which shows a family camping and fishing, and again they're having a good time and a nice family trip, and then it cuts to the family chained inside their car with cans of gasoline, and they're all ignited.
Which is, and this scene has some of the spookiest music in the entire movie. I don't know what it is. It's some kind of weird laughing clown or something like that. I don't know. It's creepy. Well
Yeah.
done.
And Elliot thinks he's taken aback by the what he's witnessing here, but he thinks this is it. This is my next book. There's
Yeah.
something going on here. He that night he hears noises inside the house. There's like footsteps, like feet paddling and running, crashing, and then we see his son Trevor emerged, arched backwards, like the girl running down the stairs in The Grudge or in The
Yeah, I was going to say
Exorcist,
Grudge. Yes, that was in my notes.
and he
Yeah.
comes out backwards and screaming from the box,
Yeah.
and
And at first you think it's a premonition that he's having, like you don't understand, but it actually ends up being hit, like Trevor having a night terror, which is interesting because night terrors tend to happen with children that either are going like families that go through a divorce or they move a lot, and they're kind of they move around a lot,
Yeah.
right? So that kind of like explains why the child is having these night terrors.
Yeah. He decides to watch more of the videos, and we see a family duct taped to lawn chairs, and then one by one dragged into their pool to drown.
And he starts off watching the movies with like a sophisticated glass of whiskey with two nice like ice cubes, and by like the third movie, he's just chugging the whiskey.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like it's not the same as watching a movie. You're watching real life. These
Oh, yeah.
films are filmed by a killer, or
You're watching real murder. Yeah.
yeah, that's got to be impactful. And he does a great job of conveying how it deteriorates himself through the process.
Yep.
Uh, he detects a demon face in the background of the pool video. He catches it and he tries to go back, and the film starts burning. So he Googles, puts the fire out. He Googles how to splice the tape, and he starts digitally recording each film as he watches them. This allows him to pause and zoom in and rewind, and allows him to research the videos better.
Mm-hmm.
Our next video is a family tied to their beds.
Sleepy time.
Yeah, in the middle of the night, and we just see a knife come up and slit their throats. And again, he's impacted by all that he's seeing. He starts Googling some of these murders and finding some pieces of information about the cases. And this once again this night the lights go out and there's noises in the attic, but now it's pitch black.
Yeah, and he can't call the police because the sheriff said you're not getting any help from us on this, like at all. So, and this is new evidence for these murders. So, I mean, technically, once you have new evidence, he's supposed to let the officials know, that the police know, hey, I found new evidence. He's supposed to let them know, but he wants to write his book.
Yes,
So if
he
he
picked up.
tells,
Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead. Sorry.
no, so if he tells them they're going to compensate all these videos, then his book's gone. So, but he also has all of this mysterious stuff going on in these videos where he wants to find out like where are these murders happening? What's going on here? How do I connect this? And so he's kind of like stuck between I want to write this book, I have this great story, but I need the police assistance, but they're not going to give it to me once I tell them I have this. Once I tell them I have this, they're going to take it from me. So
Yeah, he does pick up the phone to make the call one time,
hangs up.
and he thinks about it, and thinks like this is his next great book,
Yeah.
and he hangs up. So he goes back up into the attic. He goes, and the attic stairs are down, and there's kind of like a light pointing him up towards the attic. That's the point where I'm leaving. I might have stuck around through the rest. He goes up, and he encounters a snake, and there's drawings of all the murder scenes he just witnessed. They weren't there before. Now there's drawings up in the attic of all these murders.
And they make
He's-
it look like a coral snake,
Yeah.
which is extraordinarily poisonous snake. But there's another snake that this is pointless tidbit I'm adding here. But there's another snake called the milk snake that looks exactly like it, which is completely harmless. So they used a milk snake for that scene.
he he starts to run, and he falls through his own ceiling and crashes down in the hallway in his house. My immediate thought right then was, now there's an opening between the snake and my house. I'm gone.
I'm out of there.
I don't care if it's a milk snake. I'm gone.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting about all the drawings. In each drawing, Mr. Boogie is labeled as a viewer off to the side. So he rewatches all the films and zooms in and finds this demonic face. And I think the demon face is perfect. I think it is so creepy. They don't show it too much.
Yes.
It's like fuzzy and in the background, but just enough to be like, oh my God, that's a nightmare.
Agreed. It's less is more, right? And it's always kind of like in the distance, kind of looking at the camera, like almost like it's like stage production, like you're seeing someone off to the side, to like the left side of the curtain or something, like peering in, like somehow being influential. I agree. I thought the simple character design was perfect.
The when he fell from the attic and the police came, he makes a connection with one of the deputies who's a huge fan who says, I noticed in the back of your books you always have a thank you. I couldn't have written this book without the tireless efforts of
Deputy
officer
so
so
and
and
so.
so.
Yeah.
And he said, I could be your deputy so and so. So that's what he refers to him as. The rest of the movie is deputy so and so.
Yeah.
But he actually does help him into investigate some of these situations and gets him some good information. He finds out that these murders all took place in different addresses across the country, and that comes into play later. You would think, well, this house is haunted, but no, it's not. That's not that because one was in St. Louis, one was in California. Like they're all different locations.
Right, right. I mean, so it's kind of like comedic at first, but it actually it kind of moves the plot forward.
Yeah. In bed in the middle of the night, he hears the very distinct sound of the player, the Super 8 film player, starting on its own. And he goes into his office and he's got a picture that he printed off of the demon standing in the woods in the backyard. And in a great jump scare, he holds the picture up to the window to get it, measured into where exactly in the yard am I looking at. And as he brings the picture down, the demon is standing there.
It's still there.
And I thought it was a terrific jump scare because it's not like a meaningless loud bang. It's a holy crap, he's there.
Right. Yeah. And it's a jump scare because you see it, you don't even expect it. Like I can usually see jump scares coming like 95% of the time. But right there, yeah, it caught me off guard.
Yeah, he goes outside with a bat. I'm sorry, if I saw that image,
Yeah.
yeah, a bat just doesn't do it.
I'm going outside with my car keys and I'm leaving.
Bring the family and let's go.
Go to a hotel 100 miles away.
He encounters an angry dog. He doesn't see the demonic spirit, but he sees the angry dog, and there's a group of children spirits that we see kind of hiding behind him where he can't see them, but we, the audience, can. He finds his son Trevor is passed out in the bushes. Another nighttime terror experience, and they have to bring him inside. Inside, Tracy, his wife, wants to leave. Smart woman, and
Mhm.
and they fight.
Yeah, they're fighting about his career and moving, and she's kind of just had enough.
Yep. Family sacrifices a lot for this, and he says, it's the old argument. I'm doing it all for you, and she's like, "You're not
Right.
doing it for yourself."
It's a detriment to the family at this point. We need to now have a new conversation. And
Yeah. Uh, he goes in and he watches another movie with another good jump scare where you see a nighttime lawnmower running and a light on the mower, and then it's running over a woman's face.
it's a good jump scare.
He actually is startled and jumps back from his seat. Although with all the things he's seen, you're like, what do you think? What did he expect? An actual
Yeah.
landscaper just working? I don't think that's what was in the cards.
Right, right. You know exactly what's going to happen when you see it. You're like, okay,
Yeah, it's
let's
still
see how
good,
much
though.
of this they show. Right.
Yeah, it's his jump is timed with a scream that that really triggers the jump scare.
Right. It's good timing.
He gets a call from a Professor Jonas.
Vincent DeFario, who's
Yeah,
uncredited in the film, because when you watch the movie, you're like, wait a second, that's Vincent DeFario, but he's not credited in the movie.
yeah. He researched the symbols in the videos and reports they're all tied back to Bagul, an obscure pagan spirit known as the Eater of Children. His MO is to trick them into doing his bidding and stealing their souls. So
Yeah,
that's nightmare fuel if there
yeah,
ever
yeah,
was
pretty
it.
much. I mean,
And you have two kids.
right, right, and so he brought him in. They brought them into this house, and so now it kind of becomes this. The story kind of becomes this. If you stare into the abyss long enough, the abyss kind of gazes back into you. Like he was investigating the story, and now the story is kind of like going to consume him, right?
Yeah. At night, he doesn't leave. He doesn't bail. Doesn't get his family out of there. He locks away the videos. He puts the projector and the tapes there. He locks them in a closet. In the middle of the night, he wakes and hears them playing again. And the spirits are kind of toying with him. They're making noises. They're following him around, but they're always just out of his view. He turns and they duck away. Um, it's a little. You mentioned a little Scooby Doo-ish, like whatever door you run in, they come out the other.
Yeah, yeah.
But his daughter Ashley is talking to the spirit of the missing girl from the house they're in, and drawing murder pictures with her.
And it's kind of weird too. They make it seem like they're in like some other dimension because the spirits are moving in slow motion with no sound. I
Yeah.
thought that was an interesting choice.
Yeah. So their daughter's drawing these awful pictures. She tells them that she's drawing them with the girl and names the girl that's missing from the murder. And Tracy finds out that they are actually in the murder house,
Hmm.
and a big blow up ensues.
Yeah, she's like, "Go in your room. Me and your father are going to talk."
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is code for I'm going to rip his ass.
Right. Which is
And rightfully
interesting.
so.
Well, 100%, right? Like he completely lied about moving his family into a murder house, and she asks, and he kind of uses that sly, devilish lie because in the beginning she's like, "You didn't move us down the street from a murder house again, did you?" And he's like, "Of course not." Right, with the
Yeah.
little twinkle in his eye, and then when she brings it up now, he's like, "You asked if we moved down the street. I never said that."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's almost
Semantics.
comical. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You could hear, you can actually hear like, real couples having that kind of fight, but
When
not
I
with this kind of,
right,
gravity attached to it.
right. When I heard him say that, I was ready for her to slap him. You know, right?
Well, that night the camera goes off again. He goes to his office, but it's not there. He sees a light up in that damned attic, and up in the attic, the spirit children are all sitting around watching the home movies, and Bagul appears, and he jumps back, and he falls to the ground, and all the tapes and the machine, everything comes crashing down with him. He takes them outside and burns them. Tracy comes out and he tells her, finally, now this is what finally put him over the edge.
Yeah,
Get the kids, we're leaving right now. And
because they technically still own the other house. They say that in the beginning when they're having
Yeah.
dinner. It's like, well, we've got 2 mortgages, still trying to sell the other house, and blah. So they kind of insert that in the beginning of the movie.
yeah, exactly. And it was well scripted to make sense later
For
on.
later on, why they can just leave. Where are they going to go? It's like, well, they're going back to their house.
That's funny. They're taking off to get out of there, and they get pulled over by the sheriff, who at the beginning was giving them a hard time. And it's like, you think there's going to be a conflict there, and he tells them, he's like, I took your advice. I'm getting out of here. And he's like, well, what about the book? And he's like, there's no book. He's like, really? He's like, all right, well, you drive careful and have a good night. And he lets
him go, even though he was speeding. He's like, you're right, keep moving.
Yeah, keep it to 55, at least to get out of my county.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back at the old house, Professor Jonas calls him again, a video call, and he tells him there are particular symbols used by Bagul to access our world: scorpion, a snake, and a black dog. And of course, he's experienced all of those.
Right.
He deletes all the videos on his computer. He's completely given up on the book. But the deputy so-and-so, who was helping him, calls him to tell him that he has traced all of the murders. He has a link between all of them. Each murder victim previously lived at the house of the other murder. So these murders have moved across the country, but they followed somebody who moved into that house and then took it with them.
Yeah.
A description and a profile that he now specifically fits.
Right.
Because they went to the murder house.
He's inserted himself into this timeline chain of events. Right.
And he's back at another house. So he has opened that door.
Yep.
Upstairs in his attic, his own attic, there's a box of films. And these are the extended cuts. And we get to see the same murders with an added scene at the end of each one, showing that each murder was committed by the missing kid from each family.
Yeah.
And while he's watching them, he's drinking his coffee, and he realizes his coffee is laced, and he swirls, and he passes out. He wakes up tied and gagged in the living room along with Tracy and Trevor. And his young daughter, Ashley, walks in carrying a Super 8 camera and an axe.
Yep.
And we know what's happening. We see blood splashing across the wall, and Ashley's very artistic. We see all these paintings and drawings in the blood. They
Yeah.
don't show her chopping him up, but it's not necessary. You very
You
much
get the
get the
gist.
image.
Yeah, which I think is a good move, when it comes to
Yeah,
scenes like that. Right.
yeah, not necessary.
Just leave it to the
It
imagination.
was
We already
just as
saw.
horrific seeing the blood splashed all across the walls and her
Yeah.
painting in it.
Right.
Uh, the other kids are there, the spirits of the other kids, and Bagul is there. And he takes Ashley and leaves with her family just chopped to pieces.
Yeah.
And that's the movie. It again, I think it's a very, very creepy movie. I think the premise is so well done, and the films within the film are really what give it that stamp of sleazy horror. It's like each one of those films is like a 70s horror movie interjected into this modern film.
Yeah, it's I think it's one of the epitomes of the movie within a movie films, and not just that. I think just by itself just stands out as a great eerie, like creepy horror movie that does a lot with just does a lot with a little. Most of this movie just pretty much takes place in the house, and then watching films of other stuff that's going on. It's I think it connects everything well with Ethan Hawke's character. Ethan Hawke does a great job acting. I think it brings character to like there's conflict in the marriage and with the children are struggling to adjust to their father's insane, job where he writes about murder, right? But he thinks he's doing a good thing by like helping like society. Like he's not like a crazy person writing about horror. He's trying to help solve these crimes, but it's affecting the children and the marriage. And so there's like a lot of layer in the movie. I think that's done well.
Agree. His well-intentioned obsession
Right.
obsession never ends up good. He unravels, and as
Yep.
you said, he's a well-intentioned. He wants to write. He wants to unearth
Provide for his
these.
family, right?
Yeah, uh, but he goes too far,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a theme we've seen time and time again, where people don't know the reasonable line to stop, and we saw
Yeah.
several points in his journey where you and I both said that would have been it. I'm out,
Right. But he kept pushing
but
because
he
he
kept
needed that.
pushing.
He needed more Kentucky blood, right?
Yeah, yeah. And he's like, he even argue in one argument, he says, "What am I going to do? Teach? Like, there's plenty of people making a great living doing that. It's
Oh,
like,
you can make 100 grand easy being a professor of English or of journalism at a college. Yeah, live a great life.
and one of the great scenes that I thought that fed into this character building was he watched a news interview from him when Kentucky Blood first came out, and he's younger, and he's bright eyed and he's not cynical, but he makes a statement in his interview like, what's better, helping to solve this crime or selling 1 million copies of the books? And he said, without hesitation, helping to solve the crime. He's like, I'd rather cut my hands off than write for the money.
Right.
But he's become that guy.
Right. And he says it like very gingerly and tender to his wife. He kind of hugs her. He's like, just got to get this one last one. It's my last one, and then I'm done. And like he's just trying to like smooth her over. And it's like he's actually saying that as a possessed man. And when I mean that, possessed by the idea that he can do this again. Like he just can't stop.
And that statement when I watched that in the movie, just this one more.
Yeah.
It's the
It's a drug
classic
addict.
call of the addict.
Yep.
Just
Yeah.
one more, and
Just
that'll
one
be
more.
it.
You can't
You know,
stop.
I'm going to win this on this horse race, and then everything will be good.
Yeah.
But you probably won't.
No,
You
and
know.
you've put and like the gambling addict or the drug addict, he's put his family at risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought it was a great character arc for Ethan Hawke, who was our protagonist and the guy we're rooting for, and he actually becomes the source of everything. I mean, Bagul's the source, right? But he opens the doors with his obsessive behavior.
Right. A ghoul is the abyss, right? And he stared into the abyss too long,
Yeah,
right? And the abyss gazed back into him.
for sure. All right. Yeah. Oh, cool premise. I really like the film within.
Yeah, it's
I
fun.
thought that gave us a couple diverse things to look at, and it was a lot of fun. And two vastly different movies is something we always like to bring to the table, but both very good in their own way.
Yeah, I suggest both of them. Wes Craven's New Nightmare, a little outdated, but still ahead of its time for what it was trying to do with the fourth wall. Sinister 2012, still highly recommend it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that is our show for this week. We appreciate you watching, listening, however you find us. We are the Weekly Horoscope. I'm Jerry, that's Matt, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everyone.
Your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.